So now we're going to talk about one of everybody's favorite tools, which is the adjustment brush, or K tool, right? K is the shortcut. You'll notice that when you hit the K tool, that this dialog window changes to give you a bunch of options that you can use for that tool. When you hover over the image, you can make the brush bigger by using the brackets next to the letter P. You can set what you want to do to a local or just a part of the image. So these settings are not global, affecting the whole image. They're local, affecting just part. So if I want the sky to be darker, I can paint in a darker sky. Okay. Now it has placed a pin right there, and a mask will appear saying this is everything that you have applied that setting to. I went over the trees a little bit. If I wanted to erase, I could grab my erase tool and get rid of that so there's not too much overlay, and then go back to my brush. Now, I also can drag, oops. Notice how I'm changing things? I'm dragging to the right, dragging to the left, and I am changing settings over here, the temperature, exposure, and highlights. So you can also kind of do that. So you may not, well, I don't know exactly what I want it to look like. You can also do that. Now, say you're like, well, I think this is just too yellow. With that pin selected, you can reduce the yellow. You can add magenta. You can do whatever you need to do as long as that pin is selected. Now, maybe you want to make a new pin. Okay, and I'm going to reset all of my previous settings by clicking on the word, and I'm going to really decrease the shadows and maybe decrease the saturation for this grass, and I'm going to paint over it. Okay. So I'm desaturating it, or saturating. Let's saturate it. I can increase the shadows. Ooh, that looks pretty surreal. We can leave that. And then you'll notice I have another pin over here that when I hover over, you can see the mask for what is being affected, and you can also drag it to the right and drag it to the left, and it will affect the two sliders that you have originally set. Now, if you're like, man, I hate this pin. I just hate it. All you gotta do is select it and hit delete, and it goes away. You've got options down here for the brush, including the size. Look at the feather. At 100, you'll notice that there's a nice big space between the inner circle and the outer circle. When you take that down, it decreases and can kind of make it a little more of an abrupt effect. You may want that. There may be something that's very specific where you don't want the effect to feather out. In this case, because it's a landscape, works pretty good. So I usually leave my feather pretty high. The flow at 100, it's going to be pretty strong. If I take the flow down, it's going to take a lot more work to build up that effect. It's not going to be as aggressive the first time around. I usually leave my flow between 50 to 60. I don't like it to just kind of slam it on there. I like to build it up. Okay? And then the density of the brush, very similar. If you have a very high, let's put our flow back up, very high density brush as opposed to a kind of lower density brush. All right. So I like to leave my density, maybe 60, 70. My feather, the same. That just has to do with how much of an effect you want and how quickly. If you prefer to build up the effect, then you can leave the flow and the density a little lower. And if you need to erase, it's right here. I'm going to hit reset. You can also do something that's kind of cool. You can select a color. So say we select a color, and I want to paint that color on. Now that's pretty aggressive, right? I'm sure there's ways that we can make that a little less, right? So there are ways that you can add like little bits of hue to parts of it using that color. I think I probably would take my flow down a little bit if I were going to do that again. All right, and then if you don't like it, click on it and erase it. So to get into the adjustment brush, K in, K out. K opens up this dialog window and K closes it. Sound good?